So I'll start with one of, I think, our most exciting projects. It's in my home city of Perth. For about a year now, we've been running a trial called Renew Nexus. It was the second largest recipient of the federal government's Smart Cities and Suburbs initiative. We're working very closely with Synergy and Western Power, so the network operator in the retail, and Curtin University and a number of other consortium members, including Murdoch and the CSIRO. So the trials involved a number of households right across the city of Fremantle. It includes both prosumers and consumers. The participants in this trial were really engaged. So they participated in the first time peer-to-peer trading happened across the network in Western Australia. They were also given the ability to participate in what we call dynamic pricing. So consumers were able to set the highest price they were willing to buy energy at, and prosumers were able to set the lowest price they were willing to sell at. This enabled them to be really engaged with their energy choices and had some really interesting results. As an extension of the Smart Cities project, Ledger also recently installed a 650, I believe, kilowatt-hour battery at a site called East Village. It's also in the city of Fremantle, and it's going to be developed by Landcorp, who are a government-owned developer. We have a project in California with Silicon Valley Power. They're a utility owned by the city of Santa Clara. Our platform has been deployed there to track energy from EV charging stations and produce reports to be submitted under something called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard, or LCFS, which is administered by the California Air Resources Board. LCFS is essentially a baseline and credit scheme aimed at reducing the carbon intensity of transportation fuels. So it requires producers or importers of fuels to offset the carbon intensity of their products. Our first project there involved a car park with 49 charging stations that were linked to a 370 kilowatt solar system on the roof. So here, blockchain allowed us to create a tokenized version of the LCFS credit. So before, measurement, reporting, and verification of the credits was undertaken manually on spreadsheets. It's obviously very time consuming. Blockchain really streamlined and automated this process, and also at the same time is designing the system to be as future-proof as possible. So that's the US. Moving to Thailand, where I mentioned before, is probably one of our most exciting markets. We've partnered there with a renewable energy developer called BCPG for a number of projects across the country. Our pilot project was in an urban gated community in the heart of Bangkok called T77. So there were 5 or 6 commercial customers there, a dental hospital, a school, an apartment complex, and a shopping mall. And they all obviously have really big loads, but different load profiles at different times. So the school would, during the week when they were in class, would consume 100% of the energy from the solar system on their roof. But obviously on the weekends and during school holidays, they weren't there to consume it at all. And in Thailand, there's no feed-in tariff system, made them the perfect candidate to sell their excess to the other commercial customers who will always have demand at those times. We're lucky enough in this particular project to work with the MEA, which is a Thai government-owned distribution network operator and retailer. So like Mike was discussing before, they essentially are using a wheeling charge to allow access to a very small section of the distribution grid. So it's physically a microgrid where all of these customers are based, but to do peer-to-peer trading, it still involves a distribution network. So they worked with us very closely to think of the right charges for that wheeling charge, which is really exciting. Actually, from a regulatory and policy perspective, the Thai market has been really favourable for us. The government has really placed emphasis on new renewable generation and has really shown a willingness to embrace innovation as well. The energy minister there last year mentioned in a speech that he saw peer-to-peer trading as really essential to the system there moving on. The government's also about to announce a set of sandbox trials to sort of figure out the best models for their energy transformation there. I quote from them here. Okay, so the question is not whether Power Ledger is the only solution, or really whether blockchain is the right solution. Power Ledger is not necessarily a blockchain company. We're an energy and a technology company that happens to use blockchain as a tool to deliver something that hasn't been delivered in energy before. Thank you.
It's just a wonderful thing to see, this peer-to-peer stuff and these sort of systems that just support it and make it appear so easy. I bet it's like a duck swimming. There's a lot of stuff going on underneath. We're a bit short of time, as we always have been, but if there are any short or sharp questions for Sarah, please.
Sarah, thanks for the presentation. I just don't understand the partners. How do you see retailers' role in there? Because any energy export to the grid is still going to retailer pool settlement. So how is the retailer role? And the other question is, in my imagination, people when buy and sell, they're going to have the token, the particular token. And as any cryptocurrency is very volatile, so how do you see that impact the mass adoption?
Yeah, really good questions. I guess to answer your first question, most of our customers are not the end customers. They're actually energy retailers or renewable energy developers or strata managers. So essentially, they can use our platform to offer it to their customers. Obviously, it's a lot easier for a strata manager to do that because they're dealing with an embedded network scenario. But Synergy, integrated with our system as well, and just netted off the consumption of the participants in peer-to-peer with the rest of their reporting to the wholesale. To your second question, consumers don't have any involvement with cryptocurrency at all. The platform isn't run on cryptocurrency. It does use blockchain technology, and in some scenarios we use a token called Sparks to create the initial trading environment. But it's all just run without any, so the volatility of the crypto market doesn't affect that, which is really good.
There's another question. Yeah, this lady.
Just in terms of your Synergy example, what assumptions were made about the network part of the costs?
Yeah, so Western Power and Synergy both analysed the customer base and came up with their own bespoke tariffs for the trial, which ended up being a fixed charge. So networks were around $2 a day, and the retail charge was around $1 a day.
So basically, from a customer's perspective, it looks like they've just signed up to a new tariff.
Maybe, for them, yeah. So for them, they'll have a fixed component of the bill, and then the rest of it will be displayed as the peer-to-peer component. So they can log in at any time and see what peer-to-peer is saving them or what money it's making them, and then they'll still get their bill at the end of the 2 month period, or 1 month period, which will display the fixed charges for Synergy and Western Power, and then the peer-to-peer component as well.
Okay, and that includes not just people with PV who are selling, but also people who are buying?
Yes, consumers as well. That's not necessarily the model it would be working forward, but it's the model that was developed for that particular trial.
Okay, so it was quite visible to the consumers?
Yes, completely visible. We actually, for that one, had quite a number of information nights as well. The customers were actually incredibly knowledgeable about the energy industry, especially by the end. They put some hard questions to the test, but we made sure to check in with them as well and make sure their experience was still a positive one. We did lots of surveys towards the end of it as well.
So is that $100 a month just for the network and retail services without the energy costs? $3 a day.
Yeah, so it ended up being whatever that amounted to. Yeah, definitely.
Sounds expensive.
Yes, the fixed charges probably weren't ideal, especially because a lot of the specific participants in that trial were really low consumers as well. That's something we sort of are discussing with Synergy and Western Power, and I think we're potentially extending the trial for the next 6 months, and we'll figure out how to sort of create more positive outcomes for the people involved in that.
Because obviously in the wider scenario, the problem is that there's a shift in how we have to think about network costs and how they're currently distributed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And putting something like this on top of it in terms of how it makes it more visible to consumers will be interesting as well, because a large part of that problem is consumer expectation.
Exactly.
When they buy the panels.
Yeah, at least
Exactly right.
it's putting the issue out on the table now, which is step one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Step one is a
No,
bit
no,
of
no.
transparency so we can have the meaningful conversation. But yeah, like I was just saying when we were having a
That's
chat a
cool,
little while
don't
ago,
get me
this importance of network reform as well to match up with things that are now available or kilowatt hours side is just incredible. So one more question, we'll have the last one.
How do you see this as in the peer-to-peer trading working in a market like ours where, let's say, I'm an AGL customer and my neighbor is from Origin?
And your neighbour is
Neighbour is
from
from
Origin?
Origin.
Yeah, well, the technology itself is actually, I think one of the real benefits is that it's designed to be integrated with multiple retailers. So, you know, in that
But
probably
the market doesn't support
distant
that.
Yes, no, definitely currently you couldn't go across retailers right now. The technology itself will be able to do that in the future. Like Mike said, I think we've definitely reached sort of a tipping point, and we have to start trialing new things. And you know how we'll get there, I can't really say for sure. It might take some regulatory change, but you know just providing examples of the benefits it can provide, I think is probably the first step towards getting there.
Wow. This is what amazes me, is there's just so much amazing stuff just under the covers. And yet we've heard this morning from the retailers about the importance of stability and trust and how to engender change in community minds. Need to go and sit in the paddock somewhere.
Yeah.
Excellent presentation,
Thank you.
wonderful stuff.